The guessing game on interest rates continues this morning, both here and in America. Tonight, our time, the UK makes a rates decision, widely expected to be another increase. And it's certainly affecting the markets. Business editor Ross Greenwood joins me now live. Ross, good morning. Let's start with America, where after this month's pause, there are no promises.
There are no promises whatsoever, I've got to tell you. And it's interesting because overnight, Jerome Powell, the head of the US Federal Reserve, fronted parliamentary inquiries there, just as our Reserve Bank governors do here in Australia, and was really grilled about what the future of interest rates is. Like here, the big increases in interest rates is causing enormous pressure and hurt in many parts of the economy there. And as a result of this, really, you've got a situation now where, politicians there, as they do here, are starting to question just when is the end of these rate rises coming? Just have a listen.
Will the committee continue to raise rates later this year? What's the thinking of this? What are we to understand?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you're right, of course. We did decide to maintain the federal funds rate at its current rate at this meeting. At the same time, participants submitted personal forecasts suggesting that almost all of them thought there would be additional hikes. And I just want to say those two things are entirely consistent. The point being that the level to which we raise rates is actually a separate question of the speed with which we move. Earlier in the process, speed was very important. It's not very important now. The sense of the summary of economic projections and the decision really is just that, given how far we've come, it may make sense to move rates higher, but to do so at a more moderate pace.
So what he's saying is that the pace of the rate rises that was seen earlier may be starting to slow down, but the bias is still to raise rates to get rid of inflation in the United States. And that's a fairly similar story to what you're seeing here in Australia. But that also starts to rock around the markets. I'll show you a couple of bits and pieces. This is the Australian dollar over the past week. You can see it was nudging up towards 69 US cents at one stage, now below 68 US cents. And so over the past week or so, down by around 1.25% during that time. The other thing to watch, have a look at this. This is over the past 3 months. This is the rise in interest rates on money markets. So this is the one-year bond yield. This is the one that rocks around. So you've seen this now sits around 4.3%. Now, one worry about this particular rate is it's now higher than long-term interest rates. And that quite often signals a sharp economic slowdown or even a potential recession. But that rate, again, you can see, just eased off just that little bit after those comments in America overnight.
And Ross, here in Australia, there are also no promises about future rate rises, but the Treasurer today gave a date about when he will name who will be the Governor of the Reserve Bank after September.
Well, it's so true. And in fact, he's been pretty consistent about this. He's always said it would be mid-year when the announcement would be made about the next governor of the Reserve Bank. Philip Lowe, the current governor, well, he has put his hand up and said he would be available to continue in that role after September if chosen by the government. But of course, after a significant review of the Reserve Bank and its culture, that is a question which really comes back down to the government and indeed to the Treasurer. Here's what he said today.
Well, my intention is to come to a concluded view on the RBA Governor and announce that in July, but certainly before the Parliament returns. That's always been our intention.
So the question of who will be the next Reserve Bank Governor is kind of an interesting sort of field, if you like. This is what I've put together, at least anyway. There's Philip Lowe. He's put his hand up, there's no doubt. His deputy at the Reserve Bank right now is Michelle Bullock. There's also Caroline Wilkins, who is ex-Central Bank or Reserve Bank, Bank of Canada. But she's also on the Monetary Policy Committee Board of the Bank of England. And on top of that also, of course, was the chair of that review into the Reserve Bank. They'd have to convince her to come and do the job. The other one, and I think this is the person you've got to keep a little eye out for, is Jenny Wilkinson, the Finance Department Secretary. And so really she has the credentials, she's got the skills in the background, and I would just keep a little eye out there if there is going to be a change when the Treasurer announces this in July.
OK, remains to be seen. But just on the subject of rates, there is an interest rate decision tonight from the Bank of England.
There is indeed, and this is where it really becomes kind of a bit murky. While in the US they've paused interest rate rises, in the UK there is no such pause coming. In fact, they've got to go hard because inflation, a bit like Australia, is sticky. It's not going away. So if we have a look, say, for example, here at the cash rate and the inflation rate. In Australia, you can see our cash rate 4.1%, our inflation rate 6.8%. Have a look at the US. They've now got their cash rate higher than their inflation rate, 4%. 4% for inflation, 5.25% for the cash rate. The UK, though, have a look at this, 8.7%. It only just came out in the last day or so, and the cash rate of 4.5%. So chances are there's going to be another rate rise in the UK tonight, potentially as high as another 0.5%. That economy is going to be plunged deep into recession, a little like the New Zealand economy, to get rid of that scourge of inflation. There's no question about that whatsoever.
And just finally, how has the local share market opened up?
Well, here you go. After Wall Street was lower overnight, and despite the fact Australia's market in the past couple of days has been at 7-week highs, this is the Australian market right now, down by around 0.75% and down by 51 points, the ASX 200.